one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can we get an adoption of the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And let's go to citizens and delegation. Is there anybody that's here to speak to something that is not on the agenda? Not on the agenda? Okay. Let's move on to bright lights. We have our DI team, our middle school, Parkview Middle School DI team, that just fresh back from Tennessee. And we have a leader, Carasino.
And Janet Allen.
Yes.
Right, guys, get up and tell them what you want to tell them about. Your deal.
You guys can go right over there.
That way you can be on camera.
Why don't you guys start by explaining what the challenge was, and then Peter, you can start, and then just go on down the line.
You want to introduce yourselves?
Okay, I'm Peter Steinhoff. I'm in the seventh grade.
I'm Mason Vanoski, and I'm in the 7th grade.
I'm Allie Wilkins, and I'm in the 6th grade. I'm Lily Allen, and I'm in 6th grade. I'm Yasmin Collins, and I'm in the 6th grade.
And you're missing?
Oh, we're missing Miles to say. He's also in the 6th grade, and he was part of our team that joined us in Tennessee. So I guess I'll start. Our challenge was a performance and fine arts challenge, where we had to make a performance to solve a problem that was given to us in November.
Another thing we had to do was a Techniclue. It was had to solve the mystery and show who it was, who made it. And we had to we shot with from the show Bones. They had this sifter that would sift bones and anything from dirt. And we kind of got an idea from it, and we had many prototypes like it, and we finally figured one out. It was 2 pieces of wood with a 2x4 in the middle, and a small engine that was going to be thrown away from a weed whacker, and hooked a drill up to it and a screen over it, and it shook the sand out from the seeds, and it, yeah.
While we were in Tennessee, we watched some other performances from our state and other states, and when we were watching these performances, it gave us other ideas as to what we could do in our next years that we were performing, ideas of what we could do for our next challenges, and it was fun to see what other ideas teams had and how different they were from us. When we had time to do fun things in Tennessee, we went to an expo where there was science experiments and problem-solving activities that you could do. There was people from NASA and the Microsoft Office there with things that you could do. You could design a pin for next year. Or there was this ride thing with NASA that you could go on. And one of the science experiments was there was a balloon and a kebab stick, and if you put Vaseline on the top of it, you could stick the stick through the balloon, and it would not pop. Another thing we did on campus was we went geocaching, and we went on a website that had all of the coordinates, and then we would enter them into one of our phones on Google Maps, and then we would go to the area that it brought us to, and then we would have to try to find it, and it was a box thing that had cards in it, and then we would have to take a card, and there was about 6 or 7 of them, and once we had all the cards, we could show them to the people working it, and then we would get a pin that said we did it.
What'd you guys do?
In Central Challenge, we took 12th overall in our Central Challenge, but in our Instant Challenge, which is a different part of the DI program, we didn't do as well, and we ended up taking 24th overall.
Still good. There's a lot of teams there.
How many teams were there?
I think 50 or something in our.
A total of 108.
That's close to 50.
Well, it was broken into 2 sections.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so. But there were 108 middle school competitors. And there were 21 countries.
21
Yeah.
different countries were there.
And what was your favorite activity that you spent a lot of time doing?
Pin trading.
What
You
was
can
it?
get out your stuff and
What was it?
What is it called?
Pin trading.
pin trade.
Oh, pin
So
trading.
pin trading in DI is kind of a tradition. It's gone back a long time, and people, there are different states and different countries bring different pins to trade among the different nations that are there.
A lot of pins.
Why don't you just walk around?
Bring it over. You guys can walk around.
One
Just walk around the table.
You can see them all around.
So which one is the most favorite pin this year? There's always a
Oh,
favorite.
boy.
Isn't there?
The lightsabers was the
Oh,
one
the
that was
lightsabers.
traded for. There was a set of 3 lightsabers you could get.
And some
And a dragon.
dragon keys, or
Yeah.
dragons, some dragons eyes.
Was your pin a pineapple?
Yes,
Yep.
we had a pineapple pin that was represented our team.
Does anybody have your set?
Yeah.
Which one was the best one?
What was your,
Lightsaber?
Oh,
He has the lightsabers.
what was your favorite?
Oh, there they are,
She
okay.
has one of the dragon things.
Nice.
That's pretty neat.
Just for a little background, this team has been together since they were in 2nd grade. We lost a member this year. She ended up going to a different school, but yeah, they've competed together. They have been to state 4 different times. So the first time they made it to globals.
So did you train your
That'd be cool.
Yeah.
Those are
lightsabers, which are the ones
I
Those
don't
are
have
the
those.
ones over there. The lightsabers there.
How long did it take you to make that pineapple?
Nice.
That pineapple, it took a few weeks of hard work.
And everybody in your group helped?
And there's also 3 small
Yeah, they
pineapples
were-
that took as many pieces of paper, but they were smaller. So there's, so
And
they
was it
made
pineapple?
4 pineapples.
Oh,
It's like a trouble box.
So literally you can take
Nice.
it apart, just make
Yep.
Color.
piece by piece.
Yes,
So
we've
you
broken
can-
it in transportation. Like all of a sudden it just came in half
Nice.
and you just have to put it all back together. But yeah.
And where's there's a
Mexico, I think, Mexican man.
Yes.
Oh,
Oh,
That would be great.
I love that.
Just so you know, though, this team definitely has plans to go back next year to make it all the way to globals next year. But they are going to start. They're going to try a different challenge next year. The past 5 years we've done the Fine Arts Challenge, and this next year we are going to do the Scientific Challenge. So something a little bit different to keep them engaged. So
how long did it take you to make that pineapple?
This pineapple specifically took weeks and weeks and
How many origamis are on there?
450 different pieces. It's kind of a stem that comes out, and it was
Hollow.
used to support this top piece.
And how many did you have of those?
We had this big one, and then 3 smaller ones that are about half the size.
So don't break it.
It'd be
Pretty bad if it falls.
I'll put it back together.
So now the pressure's on, guys. There's a tradition when you go once, you keep going. So.
yeah.
I think I'd like to tie it.
It was interesting because the whole time they were there, they kept saying, "Well, next year, well, next year." I'm like, "Well, we got to get there
Yeah,
next
you gotta
year.
get
It's
there.
not
Gotta work harder.
Did I bring them?
So I take it you guys can put more hours in next year?
They can find new coaches. They can."
Boys and girls, I just want to say congratulations.
Yes.
To make it to
Excellent.
globals, you have to be, obviously, in the very top percentile to even reach that in the nation, in the world. That's outstanding. I want to say thank you also to all the coaches and the advisors, all of the time, the basements or garages that were taken over, whatever all goes into all of this, just making arrangements so they can buy the supplies. And I hear a lot in the business world from business people that what we need are kids that can graduate, that can think critically, that can communicate, that can work together as a team. I can't think of an activity that prepares kids better than DI. And that's something that I hope we can continue to sustain with, 34, 35 teams now, district-wide, and it's a great tradition that we have. But thank you, and let's give everybody a round of applause.
I'm just trying to find something worthy of a pin trade here.
You have nothing.
So you guys are all coming back, same team next year?
Excellent. Good job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome to stay and watch the rest of the meeting. I'm sure you have nothing better to do. Or you can go. Your choice.
Very
Thank
exciting.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And thank you for having us.
You bet.
Thank you.
Good job.
guys.
So that's, how does he define, that's, it used to be that, right? And it's turned into destination,
That's what the smart kids do.
It's a great program. You brought back some good memories right there. It was a nice.
Okay, we're gonna go into the consent agenda. And that would include minutes from our regular meeting held May 9th. Scheduled checks written 5-3 through 5-6.
6'6".
6-6. We have teacher staff, new hire of Taylor Schmidt, full-time kindergarten instructor position at Pioneer, hire of Bridget Johnson, a half-time 4K instructor at Cormier, new hire of Emily Loretz as a part-time .5 FTE language instructor at the high school. We also have George Reynolds as a part-time .65 FTE art instructor, shared between high school and Valley View. Nicole Zwires is a 1.0 cross-categorical instructor at the high school. Kyle Caston, 1.0 grade 3 instructor at Valley View. And we have the resignation of Kathleen LaPrise Brusky, .5 face instructor. We also have support staff, the hiring of Jill Lemire as a full-time ed associate, 9-month position at Pioneer, hiring of Karen Blazik to a 1.0 administrative associate, elementary secretary at Cormier. The hiring of Lynn DeRoche, she's adding .43 to her .57 as a library aide at Valley View. And the resignation of Donna Bino as a noon duty supervisor at Pioneer, and the resignation, I'm not even gonna, Veselina Karpanova as a noon duty supervisor at the high school. And we also have new hire of Renee Vandenberg as a .85 literacy coaching instructor position as limited term at Valley View. We get a motion to,
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as reported.
I'll second it.
any comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Let's go on to H, Superintendent's Report.
Okay, I just want to recognize Mr. Wires, Mr. Bake, the Valley View staff for being honored again and recognized at the state level for the PBIS. It's actually considered it's a School of Distinction Award for the Positive Behavior Intervention and Support System. Kurt, I have to ask, is this the third time that the school has been awarded this award?
Fourth time.
The fourth time. So for 4 times this year, they're one of 162 state schools statewide to earn this recognition. So congratulations to Kurt, to Andy, and the whole staff for pretty neat recognition. They get a certificate. You'll see a banner again. Maybe you've seen the banner in past years that will be mounted on the school. And they also get a free registration for a conference that's held here in the state annually. And with that, a lot of contacts happen. I know over the last 3 years, we've had a lot of people come and actually visit the school because obviously they want to find out what it is that we're doing. And it's kind of a neat experience, I think, on both ends, because you steal ideas from other colleagues, right, as you share different things that happen in the schools. Congratulations again to Kurt. I also want to say thank you to, this was our first day of summer school today. It's never easy when you have rain to start summer school for a lot of reasons. Kids are trying to find locations, and parents are in maybe a different school location or whatever, but you know, all things considered, it went very well. I want to thank all of the summer school administrators and the staff. It's always neat for me to notice, and I try to recognize our local people that make the commitment. They literally closed their school books on their classes last Wednesday, and today they were right there back in front of kids, and a lot of energy and a lot of people. I'm sure if it's, I didn't get a total count yet, but I think we'll have over 1,000 kids. It's neat to see at the middle school and high school levels this year some new offerings that are being added to that's one of our goals, try to augment that offering a little bit. So,
Excellent.
thank you to all the parents that had to brave everything that happened this morning, and to all the staff members. Any other questions for me?
Okay, let's move on to discussion presentation items. Number 1, Cormier parking lot review. Mr. Schmidt.
All right. Okay, everyone see that?
Yep.
What we wanted to talk about today was kind of the master plan, I guess 4 or 5 year plan, if you will, on what we're trying to accomplish with the parking lot modifications at Cormier School. And as you know, it's an unusual situation that we have at Cormier, because we have parents walking children in and parents dropping students off where teachers walk them in. And that's a little different than the other schools. So what we're trying to accomplish right now with our parking lot, this is phase 1. And what we did is we're rebuilding this parking lot. We've ground it down to, we ground all the asphalt down and using it as base. We're adding a row of parking here to help alleviate some of the parking issues in the street. Along with replacing a piece of asphalt that was in here with a sidewalk now. So there's a sidewalk there. So this is kind of the phase 1. This is what's going on right now. When we're done, we'll have about 15 more parking stalls. And it's currently lined as one-way traffic going in, and it'll come out this way.
Is that the way it is now?
It'll be lined exactly the way it is right now, but we will be adding on that row of parking. So that's kind of the phase 1.
Is that right now just drop off and pick up? Teachers
Correct.
are
Right
gonna
now,
have to-
everything happens for drop-off, pick-up. In this area, buses are out here in the morning, and then they kind of out here and in here in the afternoon. And so, what we're trying to accomplish is a separation of bus drop-off, student walk-in drop-off, and student drop-off, where the teachers grab a hold of them and pull them out, if you will. Which is a little easier to see. And kind of look at the concept moving forward. What will happen is this will be now where parents will come in and it'll reverse. But parents will be able to park all along the building and walk their students in without having to, with as much as possible, cross the lanes of driving traffic. So they'll have all this area right here. Staff will park in here to try to alleviate parents backing in and out of stalls and walking kids through. And then the parent drop-off, where they drive up and then the teachers grab them and bring them into the school, would happen on this turn loop. By taking the turn loop and bringing it down here, it'll also help alleviate the staging of traffic along the roadway here, because many of the cars will be staged past the entrance driveway into here and then up into the loop. So we're hoping to eliminate a lot of the traffic problems that we have right now. In addition to that, what we have on here, you'll see this is the row of buses, and this is the part that we've asked the village and talked to the village about, and Keith can address that a little bit better, but the idea would be to take the buses and get them off of the bus drop-off location, which is separated from the parent walk-in and the parent drop-off. So that's kind of the plan. Make any sense?
Don't they drive on Cormier already, buses?
And they are right now, and Keith has had conversations on whether, maybe we just continue to do that, or.
So, and that's what, our plan right now is to continue to do that. Public safety realizes that's not the best outcome, so what we've talked to the village about is when they redo Broadway next, they're gonna create that bump in and just create more space, because with traffic on Broadway and those buses parked there are concerns. We haven't had an incident, and I don't think we'll have any, but it would be safer if we have that bump in. So we just talked to the village next time they redo the road to create that and create more safety and eliminate, there's a terrace area between the sidewalk and where the buses drop that creates a snow removal issue, because that becomes a snowbank and it's hard to get out of a bus into a snowbank. So our custodian there has to work on clearing it out, and the buses have to be in precisely the right spot. Whereas if it was right up to the sidewalk, we just clear the snow off the sidewalk and it would be clear, so it would be better all the way around.
How many buses park there in the morning? Or in the afternoon?
Is it
Let's see, there's 8 or 9.
8 or 9, it's
Yeah. Mhm.
So you remember, in the morning, you've got 4K buses and K buses, and then at noon, you've got 4K buses, and then after school, you've got 4K and K, so
Mhm.
it's quite a few buses and little ones getting on and off.
Part of the phase 2 also is we're looking at creating, and this used to be an entrance door to the school, and then it was remodeled many years ago. But we're looking at creating another entrance here so that we'll have 1, 2, 3 entrances for the drop-off, where the teachers can come out and bring them back into the school.
It also will help with recess and things like that,
Mhm.
getting to that playground area. That door will be a big benefit, and having, as we do that, we'll do bathrooms by that door, so kids at recess have a bathroom right there. Right now, they have to walk around and get to the bathroom, which requires staff time.
Is there any concern with lack of green space when this is fully implemented? With it being kindergarten,
I've
they
not
may
heard any concerns from Fayette on things. We don't have, obviously, teams at this
Right.
level, so the green space needs aren't as great.
It's more
and-
playground space.
And when you look on the Cormier Road side of the school, there's a fair amount of grassy area there that if they want to do things for Fayette, they've got some space there that they could use, so I have not heard any.
Tom, what's that space in the horseshoe there?
This
In the
here?
middle, yeah.
That'll be just a green or a grass area or a place. Actually, when they come in, I would envision that they're gonna turn the snow into the middle. So it's another snow storage area for when they do their plowing. Because here they're gonna have to take it, either in this area for plowing or in that area for plowing.
It also will help with runoff of rain,
Mhm.
things like that.
Right now, their playground area kind of goes like this, if this helps Brian. And
Yeah.
actually, if we refence it, we could actually even maybe create a little bit more. But I haven't heard that they kind of want to keep them
Keep them contained?
Yeah, because it's,
They're pretty little.
try to keep them close.
Mhm.
So that's kind of the plan.
What's your timing on the phase 2 part?
Well, that's, I guess that's up to
It's gonna
us
be
to
contingent
decide,
on
so.
budget.
Okay.
If the budget turns out like I expect or hope it will, optimistically hope with our budget this year, we could have half of that phase 2 in the 16-17 budget and be able to do it next summer as a 16-17 and a 17-18 project, combining 2 budget years. That's my hope, and assuming we end up with some more money put back into the maintenance fund. Right now, when we look at the budget, I won't have all the money back in that was requested, so we have this project kind of on hold. And it can be on hold until we finalize our budget, because it wouldn't start until June next year.
First thing when I see this and everything isn't it going to be a little bit more of a nightmare, if you will, or a problem with student drop-offs at 3 different spots in here? I mean, you got them coming in this side, and this side. All the kids and everything. I mean, where does Maria concentrate?
Well,
You know what I mean? It's
when you
like-
look at school design, the current thought on school design is you need to separate those 3 types of traffic. And Cormier's unique in that with the age of the kids, the parent drive-up drop-off you have to have staff there helping the kids, taking them out of the car, so you keep that drive-up line going. So you really need to separate that, so the last thing you want is 2 drop-offs where people are crossing between moving vehicles or between buses, things like that. So the safest thing is to separate the 3, and that's why we're creating 3 separate entrances into the building, and then we'll use the staff to help the kids with the entrances and make sure they're getting to the right spot. The nice thing is that buses are separated, but they all empty at basically the same time or load at the same time, so it doesn't take a lot of supervision time on the bus side. That's fairly quick. The parent drive up and where the parents want to walk their kids in is really a unique thing to Cormier as well. You don't see that at the other buildings. The parents, pretty much the other buildings, as the kids get older, drive up, the kids get out of the car and walk themselves in. Here we have a good number of parents who want to drive up, park, walk their child in, maybe talk to the teacher for a second, make sure the child knows whether they're taking the bus home or their parents come and pick them up, all those things. So we've got 3 big pools of traffic, and the more you separate kids from moving vehicles and having to cross a path, the safer it is.
I think part of the answer, Mark, is Maria and Jackie and Jerry and the staff do a really good job. You know, they'll be right out here. They'll be right out here at these entrances, and they'll be lined up around here. If you've ever seen how they bring those kids into school, it's quite remarkable. So I think they have enough staff that would be able to separate and educate the parents, and I think every year they educate half the school. They're going to have to do that anyway, so I think it'll be okay. Yeah.
A couple quick questions just to clarify that the parking lot, the upper parking lot there, what is that used for?
This is basically playground.
It's playground area now. That would be a future expansion if we, with this expanded parking lot, still don't feel we have enough parking. We could put staff parking there and reconfigure the playground closer to the school. But right now it's kind of hard space in the playground where kids can do things where they need a blacktop surface.
Okay, so currently that's playground, that's
Yes.
not a parking.
Yeah, that's right.
And then the other question I had is, since it sounds like we have a little time possibly before that loop in phase 2 gets constructed, is there a way to design that a little differently so you could keep more green space? Like, is there a way to, instead of having the loop kind of, jet out to the right, or maybe is there a way to even look at, and I don't know, I'm just asking questions, but instead of going back and out the same way, what if you connected it to Broadway there?
And we talked about that at length, and the concern about that is now you're driving in and through the playground area.
Well, I'm just saying if the playground area moves, I guess, or we look at a
Isn't the playground area fenced?
It's fenced
Yeah,
right now, but
it's currently
the issue I
fenced, yeah.
think was the traffic concern on Broadway and cars getting out. How much traffic you're talking about, where it's easier to get back out of the loop and back onto, I think that's Center Street on the other side, where if they had to go onto Broadway, the drop-off traffic would stop because a car couldn't pull onto Broadway, and pretty soon now cars aren't able to pull in. You want to be able to get cars in and out of that loop as fast as possible. We originally had it drawn like you suggested, and when we met with public safety and met with the village on it, they liked this option better. They thought from a traffic flow, it's better to have that Center Street traffic than it is to try to put more crossing onto Broadway.
I got a question. Tom, on the parking that goes up to the school,
This?
right up to the sidewalks there.
Okay.
If you're coming in that driveway to the right there,
No,
down,
the left. You're coming in from the left.
It's going to be this one. It
you're coming in
reverses.
there?
Yeah,
that'll be
it
the
actually reverses when this phase gets put in.
Okay, that's,
Mhm.
because the slide before that, you were going in the other one.
Yeah.
And that was because we had the drop-off traffic along the sidewalk right in front of the school, and you need to have the passenger side door on the drop-off side so that the kids don't have to get out and walk around the car.
Okay, that's,
Yeah, it does reverse, Mark. I didn't explain that very well, but
okay.
right now it goes in this way and out, and when this happens, it'll go through this way and out.
Okay.
Will that new front entrance have like a canopy over the top or when it does rain?
We haven't really gotten that far, but it could.
It'll have something for when it's raining.
Yeah.
We won't have anything the size of the main entrance, but that entrance by the playground will have some type of cover so that.
Mhm.
I'm just thinking like today and you have all the line of the buses, do all the kids just run?
They move pretty quickly. Kids don't seem to mind the rain as much as adults do.
I'm melting.
I think, Keith, did you also talk, when you talk to Public Works or whoever, about the traffic flow? Also talk about going entering in Broadway and going out on Central Street?
We talked about that, and once again, they preferred this method. You're kind of separating the traffic and separating the bus traffic from the car traffic in that case. So we'd done several configurations with Broadway in the mix, and this was the one that public safety liked the most, was keeping that car traffic on that side street.
Okay.
Any other questions? And we'll talk more as we move forward when we start into the second phase. So.
Yeah, so phase one was what you approved at the last meeting, and phase two, then we would, assuming we get the budget money in this coming year's budget, bid out over the winter, and you would be approving in February, March, so we can get it set up and going this following summer.
When did you say phase one is predicted to end, be finished?
Pardon?
When is phase one gonna be finished?
They're
Friday.
scheduled to pave on Thursday, but it's talking rain now, so it'll be Friday, hopefully.
Okay.
They'll be done and it'll be lined.
If we get a couple days of rain, it could be Monday or Tuesday though, so they're going as fast as they can. It's all weather dependent.
The school got done last Wednesday and they're already almost done with it?
They already have it ground. Were they gonna
Oh,
pave
okay.
today if it hadn't rained this morning?
They were going to grade today and tomorrow and pave on Wednesday, but that's now pushed back to Thursday, but there's rain in the forecast for Thursday, so. They said if it rains Thursday, they'll have it paved on Friday.
Did they have to repair any concrete?
The concrete that we installed, this used to be asphalt right here, and we took that out, and it's now a sidewalk that goes through here.
Okay, that was
So,
it.
and then I built a ramp apron for the
Wheelchair?
for the garbage trucks because they beat the asphalt down, and so now there's an apron there, so we avoid the damage to the asphalt. So we've done that and the concrete work here, so we should be in good
So the
shape.
dumpsters are right in that corner? Right?
Correct, they're right here, and that's their location right now.
Is that gonna change after phase two?
No, phase two will have sidewalk drop off, and they'll walk, right
So
behind it.
it's in an
kinda what they
enclosure,
do.
Brian, so it's not
Yeah, it's not
sticking out there.
I'm just thinking
Yeah.
everyone coming in at main entrance right past the dumpster.
It's a trade-off. We talked about moving it, but you also need it close for the crews that are using it, and you need it big enough where the garbage trucks can pull in, get it, and get out without having to turn too sharply with how tight the parking lot is configured, so.
One of the other location that we looked at was here, but what it does, it puts it right up against the playground
Yeah,
fence,
you
and we
don't
don't want
want
the bees, kinda wanna keep the bees and the stuff away from the kindergartners, so this location still works out well. Cause the truck can now come straight in, grab it, back up, and then come right out. So it'll work out fine. Anything else?
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, let's move on to action items. First action item, adoption of the annual meeting and budget hearing agendas. Keith?
Don't have much to say. The agendas are basically the same as they've been in recent years, so unless there's something that you want to change, I think they're pretty self-explanatory.
Move to approve the annual meeting and budget hearing agendas as presented.
Second.
Okay, we have a first and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Action item 2, policy 511 and bylaw 0140. Brian?
Okay, well, you asked me to bring back 5111 and 0140. I'll just give you the two bottom lines, and if you have other questions here. If you look at what the state said about, educating illegal aliens, that's just a requirement. We don't have an option. That was, of the two questions, Bob Burns didn't have a whole lot to say other than that's just not an option, given, the guidelines that we have to abide by. And filling a board vacancy, he basically said, this has never been contested, so he qualified what he said in his opinion there, but the intent of the statute is the board should vote and fill a vacancy. If for some reason you can't agree or you don't do that, then the board president should appoint someone, and then it goes up for election, after that. That's basically what he was saying, but he said that's the way the guideline is written, and that's his interpretation. This has never been challenged. And, you know, I think you know how I feel. I think it gives the board an opportunity, and it does say in our policy that you have the option to sort of interview people and have a process, create whatever process that you feel works best for you to really get to know the candidates to a point. In my opinion, I think it kind of serves the best of both worlds. You get a chance to meet somebody, they get a chance to try it on as well, and then they would have to run and get elected, you know, after that. So it's not uncommon. This has happened.
Well, I brought both of these back because I had some questions about both of them. And, I mean, I think that we'll take the 5101 first. As far as legal aliens, giving them an education, I think that every kid should have the rights to do it, but I don't think it's fair to the residents paying the taxes and everything else. If a kid's homeless or something like that, I understand that, but a legal alien is different in my book. And I just wanted to bring that out there. I didn't. I think that everybody should be a part of the community before they are a community the right way, whether it's, you know, whatever, whichever way it is. And I'm glad to educate them and everything, but I just think that they have to be a resident of the United States, in one shape or form. You know, that's it. So I mean, that was my intention on bringing it back, not for that. I don't think that kids shouldn't have the right education. Just my point of view, I guess. So
maybe here's a question. So if they reside in Ashwaubenon, we educate them. If they reside in, let's say, Green Bay or outside of Ashwaubenon and choose to school choice, does that give us options, to Mark's point, or not? Are they just like any?
That's not a denial option.
That's not a denial option. So really, you're tied by the state law, and you have no choices.
That was my understanding. Yeah.
Okay.
Just for clarification, what is the funding options for that, or is there no funding?
Well, if they're a
from the state point of
resident,
view?
they're treated like any other resident. If they're an open enrollment, they're treated like any other open enrollment. So, resident, we get the membership count. If they're open enrollment, we get the open enrollment tuition.
So we don't get anything for that.
Anything for what?
They're
They'd be a resident most likely, and if they're a resident, we get the same thing we would get for any other resident student.
And do you even know? I mean, if they have an address, do you even know?
Yeah,
if their parents are
we don't
residents legally?
check citizenship at the buildings. If they have a Ashwaubenon resident, they're treated the same regardless. And to be quite honest, I don't think we want to get into that. They treat everyone the same, give everyone the same opportunity.
My point is not that we shouldn't give an education to kids, I guess. It's just that they should be
legally here.
And I understand we don't want to do it, but I wanted to make a point that everybody knows why I brought it back. So, okay. Now the other one, I know that we've ran across this at least twice since I've been on the board, and what we've done in the past is that the board has appointed several times, and it is an advantage to whoever gets appointed. And to make it the decision of one person, like the president, has never been done before. We've had locked board in the past where they decided not to fill the spot and just let it go to the referendum the next April, or let it go up for vote the next April for about, so it stayed open. It was a 4-member board for about 4 months. So I understand Bob's position. I know that it's happened here several times. We've appointed in the past, we have not appointed in the past when we come to deadlocks and everything. And it, so I mean, I'm putting a little bit of I mean, I don't know what your thoughts on it, you know, Jay, or.
I mean,
it's-
I would hope that,
it
and
depends
I guess
on-
we gotta look at the future too, because, I mean, I think we have a pretty agreeable board now.
It all depends on the makeup.
10
of
years
the
from
board.
now, we don't know what the makeup of the board's gonna be like, and we're making decisions now for them, right?
That's a good point.
But I mean, I think as far as we're concerned, I mean, I think we can be pretty agreeable, and if we do get to the point where we're gonna have to fill that position, well, first let's get some candidates here that we can choose from. And I think in the past elections, we've noticed that it's been pretty sparse as far as people that want to be on our board. Right?
Well, when you have we haven't had to appoint anybody.
Correct.
And when you have that, you'll get people that'll go for an appointment
Rather than go through the
that won't
general
go through
election.
the election.
But wouldn't it, an appointment would only be until the
The next
election?
election.
The next
Yeah.
election, right?
So if, I guess if a vacancy occurred in January and they were beyond the deadline, it could be a longer term appointment, right? Or would they be appointed for the remainder of that term?
If somebody had to resign in January, I would not be in favor of appointing somebody in January or February.
Right,
I would
leave it until-
opt out to the election.
But if people didn't sign up before the end of the year, or January 5th, or whatever the date is, deadline date, let's say you had a vacancy in
That's
January
true.
15th, and it was beyond the cutoff point,
Is it gonna mess up the election cycle? I mean, we're 2-2-1.
Well, if we
Would it
have,
go 3-1-1 possibly?
if Paul, say he resigned, he's served one year of his term so far, right? Or will have. So in the next
2
election,
meetings.
you'd have 2 3-year terms and 1 2-year term.
Oh, got it, okay.
So I don't know, I mean, it's happened here, so I mean, it's not something that we've done in the past, we've had past practice. I would probably, when it happens, it's because that there's a difference of opinion.
So what are you
between everybody
proposing?
out there. I would support, well, I gotta get to it here first, I've been talking about it and not,
Well, you don't want the board president to make the election,
exactly.
the appointment, I should say.
I don't want that to be in that position. It'd be E.
So under E, what we took out after talking about Burns was what Mark is stating has happened in the past, is at the next school board election, the public makes the decision. What we've added is, if the board wouldn't agree on an appointment, then the board president has that ability to appoint somebody. That's just to clarify the differences there.
So we would, so if, what we'd like, one of the options would be, we attempt to fill that position. If we can't agree on it, the board president doesn't do it, we just go to the next board election.
If you couldn't agree on who you were going to appoint, the way this is proposed, after talking about Burns, and the board president
But the other
appoints-
option, do we have the option then of not having the board president make that appointment?
According to Bob Burns, the way he interprets that, he would say, the spirit of the law is to do what I'm recommending. But he will come back and say, Brian, this has never been contested. You know, it's one of those things. It's never been tested in the court of law, and maybe it's never happened, I don't know. When you have a 4-member board or a 7-member board, if all of a sudden you have an even number, obviously, you have that ability to stalemate on decisions, and it can create problems. And I agree with what you're saying with our group. That's highly unlikely. I don't see that happening. That's, I'm sure, the reason for the spirit of the law, what they're trying to create. Just like, you know, a student council, you try to have an odd number because obvious reasons, crew vote and whatnot.
Right, and again, like I said, and you just reiterated, I don't think it would be an issue with us, but 10, 15 years from now, that comes
That's what we
into
thought
play.
too. That's what we thought too. So I mean, you know, back then, you know, you thought that you know, that there's not gonna be that animosity when someone
And
does
maybe,
that.
maybe a rift could cause somebody to wanna get off the
Right.
board. And then you're possibly divided.
So currently, the board would vote if they didn't decide, or there was a stalemate, then it would go to the public? Is that what happened in the past? To then get somebody in there? What was the due process in the past, I guess?
We took applications from people, and then we took and interviewed them.
Okay.
And then the board voted on who they wanted as that person.
So if they.
And if it was tied 2-2,
Mhm.
you know, they'd throw out another name, someone would throw out another name, and they went back and forth, and finally it was declared that we couldn't make a decision on it, so it went to the next election.
Mhm.
We could, that was the fairest thing to do, so that you didn't, you know, we wouldn't made a decision otherwise. So whoever was with the president at that time would have got their person in if that's what you wanted to do. So, I mean, you're you know what I mean? It's
Sure.
Right. Hmm.
I would like to see it go back the way it was before on E. I mean, change back to the vacancy shall be filled at the next school board election and eliminate the appointment by the board president. I'll make that motion.
Just to, I know you got a motion first, then I can ask a question.
We need a second first, and then you can ask a question.
I second that.
Okay?
So,
Discussion.
so the question would be, are you only able to have a school board election in April?
Yes.
And there are periods of elections throughout the year. You can't have a special, you know, in August or November when there is a primary or a you know, a major election. Is that correct?
Or I've never seen it happen before, so I think it's always.
It's always April? Is that a requirement?
I think so.
Pretty sure it is.
Yeah.
I think all local elections are April, and your state elections are November and for people, so I mean, I don't think you can get away from that.
Okay, I just wondered if that
The
was.
only thing we could do is a referendum.
And that's, yeah.
But then those get expensive, and you'd think you'd be able to come up
You
with
can't do a
good
referendum for a
candidate.
person. I don't
Right,
think.
for that kind of a reason.
Could the board decide at the time just to vote to extend the 60 days instead of having to, you know, because really if you look at it from what Brian said about how you couldn't even sign up to be on the board before, what,
January 5th, I think, is the
15th.
deadline.
So then 60 days out from that is, I mean, almost April.
Mhm.
So if it happened sometime from April until January, could you say, can I just extend the 60 days for another 60 days to try to fill the position instead of having it be appointed to the president?
I agree with that one as well. You know, I don't know if we want to limit us to 60 days. I don't know what the reason was behind that. You know, I know there's a motion and I seconded, but, you know, do we want a different motion to, you know, have an option of extending it another 60 days or whatever?
So you're saying
Can
it
we-
would
can
now
we
be
say-
120 days before you even
Well,
have to fill it?
or have the option of extending it.
And could you do it at the time? If, let's
Well,
say
if you look at it this way, if we can't fill it in 60 days, nobody else is going to magically appear, and
60 days is a long time.
It's
That's
a long
time. It seems like it's a
It's
long
2
time.
months.
I mean, if, you know, like I say, we're going through it and everything, I mean, we had 12 candidates one time, and I think we had 4 or 5 the next time we did it. So, I mean,
It seems like you should be able to select out of that.
you know, should be able
Yeah,
to.
should be able to.
But it is, for that candidate, whoever gets that approval of the board has a distinct advantage. You won't get, if you had 5 people apply for that position, open position,
Mhm.
and you selected one of them, I bet you don't get 3 of them to run.
If that.
Mhm. Makes sense. I mean, I think that's life. I mean,
Yeah.
it's the way it is in every other type of a role as well. I don't think that's any different.
Right.
What I would say, Mark, is you also know that person's willing to make that extra commitment. You know, if you look at it that way also. I know, I understand your point.
I mean, I think that's why the 4 remaining were elected, was to take care of filling that spot. And that's that's our job. If it means recruiting people to come and apply, or making a decision on the 10 or 12 or however many are applying, that's what we were elected to do, make a decision.
And again, Brian, we have a pretty agreeable board now.
Yeah.
Right?
You never know
What's
be
going
the
to happen in
makeup
the
later.
future.
Right.
And you're putting a lot of pressure on the president to alienate the rest of the board by doing that.
So it
Two other
behooves
people.
the board members to find and move the process so that it occurs in 60 days, as opposed to waiting until
Correct.
beyond that, where the president would make a call.
Any other discussion? Okay, so we have a motion on the table. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
So it's a motion to keep things the way they were?
Yes.
Okay.
And we did both of them, right?
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, I'm not gonna test the other one.
Okay. All right, 3, Betsy, lunch price increase.
It's pretty straightforward.
Mm-hmm.
Well, as you know, we're required to follow President Obama's Healthy Hungry Kids Act of 2010 regulations. And the United States Department of Agriculture is our governing agency, and they require school districts to complete a price lunch calculator every year to determine if our prices are fair. So in a way, the Healthy Hungry Kids Act regulates our pricing. So when we plugged in the formula that they gave us, it came out to be that we need to increase our lunch prices 10 cents again next year. So we'll be going from $2.45 to $2.55 for K through 5th grade, and 6 through 12 will go from $2.70 to $2.80. The breakfast will remain the same at $1.60, and our guest meals will also remain the same, as well as our milk prices. So lunch will be the only increase.
How did our budget go this year? I mean, were we this past year as far as what we did with these old pricings?
It was kind of an offset, Mark, because we increased it 10 cents last year, but we incorporated so much more fresh produce in our line, and food prices were so high this year that I don't know what the bottom line is yet, because we don't have our state aid back from May or June. It looked when I looked last, that we were actually negative for our fund balance. So
Negative for the year, but
for
our
the
fund
year.
balance still is positive, so we're not going to be taking from Fund 10
correct.
to cover Fund 50.
One of the rationales of the United States Department of Agriculture calculator is so food service can remain independent and not rely back or go to the general fund for a substation. That happened to a few districts in our area. We've been able to manage it independently, where we are self-sufficient in our funding. This 10-cent increase supports that.
Okay. Betsy, you said that it was mandated for more fresh produce. How did that go over? Was there much waste? Was it?
It's a learning curve, and it's an expensive lesson, but I think it's getting received. I see K through 3rd grade becoming much more health conscious. We go through more black beans and fresh produce K through 3 than we do at any other schools or any other grades. And I think a lot of that stems from home, that they're actually experiencing that at home. And the government has made lunch a classroom now. And the fact that we're to educate some kids, because parents aren't, on what some healthy choices are. So at Parkview this year, we played around a little bit with the menu, because I don't like prices to increase. Every time the prices increase, we lose participation rates. So we tried to put our hook in the water and catch some more students. And we put out a produce bar at Parkview this year. I don't know if you've seen it. It's actually a salad bar that has all fresh produce on it. And, well, some of it's canned, especially in the wintertime. But it's all fruits and vegetables. Went over really well. So we'll start it again at the high school. What it replaces is a salad bar. So the mixed greens will be on this produce bar, as will all the vegetable toppings, but any proteins or fruits or grains would be separated from that. So that's a more costly adventure to put out. It's beautiful to look at, but yeah. The waste is more prevalent at the upper grades, because it's mandated that we offer a cup, and they choose and place on their tray a half cup. So we put out ladles that say 1/4 cup scoops, and you can pick up to 4, but must pick 2, so that it gives them the option of picking a half cup to a cup of any of that. We don't regulate that real strongly on our maximum side, but we regulate it strongly on our minimum side, because that's what the regulations say to do. High school, we see more creative options for our fruit and vegetable drinks. You know, some come in drink form, some come in icy cups, dried fruit jerky, anything to get them to try it or get that on their plate, and that it gets eaten. So
I think that the kids, when we instituted this, was it 10 years ago when we made that big change? We had that
At least 10.
It was about 10 years ago. Have graduated now. You know, when we first started it, we took a lot of flack for it back then. But you can tell the kids that have taken it and how they've changed. My kids are in there, how they changed their eating habits by what we did back then. And it's now they're starting to have kids, and they're going to be starting to come into school, and I think that's what you're seeing now.
yes.
Is, you know, so that it's coming back around again.
Right. So we're educating the future parents.
Right.
Just the last 5 years, you know, I gotta commend you, because
Yeah.
it's been a huge change in the last 5 years
Yes,
of
it
what
has been.
we've had to do.
Mhm.
I think you've done a great job with that.
It's working. I do see that it's working, but it's taking time and money to make it work. But it is working.
End results, healthier kids, hopefully.
I hope so,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right, so we need a motion. We need
Is
a
that,
question.
you know, is that, we're on budget with this? I mean, we're not gonna be creating a big cash cow here by increasing 10 cents
No,
here.
and we don't, to be honest, we don't have a choice. The goal of
What
the
is the
federal
choice we
government
don't?
is to get us up to what the free reimbursement rate is that we get for students. That's their goal. So what the calculator does is tell us how much we have to increase each year in making progress towards that goal. So if we don't do it, the consequence would be, if they find out we didn't do it, they could take away our free and reduced lunch reimbursements, and that would be catastrophic for some families. So I don't think we want to risk that.
Now, the free rate for reimbursement from the government right now is $3.13. And we're charging a medium. We have to meet a medium. And by that, to meet that medium of $2.78, I have to do $2.80 here and $2.55 here.
So unfortunately, they've taken it really out of your hands, and it becomes a procedural thing having it approved, because we don't, unless we want to risk. And there are some affluent districts in other states that have pulled out of the free lunch program, but they're districts that have 5% or less of free and reduced lunch kids, and have decided that with our percentage of free and reduced lunch kids, I just don't see it as an option.
What's that percentage about?
Depends on the building, but overall, we're about 25, getting close to 30.
Yeah,
Wow.
It's over 40% on Cormier and Valley.
it is.
Yeah.
All right.
I'll make a motion that we approve the increases in lunch prices as recommended.
We get a
Second.
second? Okay. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
I think, Mr. Schmidt, I think you're up again. This is proposal for parking lot maintenance.
Okay, we're working on dressing up and straightening up our parking lots so that we get another 10 or 15 years out of them. 2 years ago, we did extensive crack filling in them. And now what I'd like to do is go in and repair the spots where the bases have broken up. So I solicited a couple proposals, and this is the one that best fits the needs for our parking lot maintenance. So if you have any questions, I'd love to entertain them.
So that would be repairing the basins, cutting them out, putting new concrete in, resealing the asphalt, and painting lines, right?
Correct. What they'll first do is, we've identified a number of areas in the parking lots where the base is broken up, and they're gonna actually cut out those areas and then install and replace it with new asphalt. So they'll do that around the catch basins where it's required. If there's the catch basins where they're tilted, they'll rebuild those, and then they're gonna seal coat and restripe. So it'll really dress up all of our parking lots, be in good shape.
So Tom, is this a every other year deal, or is this every year?
No, this is about an every 5 or 6 year deal. We have not relined in about 6 or 7 years. We've done a little bit on our own as the custodians have, but when you see our parking lots, we're pretty faded. The seal coat will do a lot of things. It'll help dress up and the relining. You'll be able to see all the lines. And secondly, it protects the asphalt, which is getting older from the UV rays that are beating it up right now. So you'll see the surfaces are starting to deteriorate a little bit. So this will prolong the life of those for a number of years.
The
This will-
third side benefit from a risk management standpoint is being darker black in winter. The ice will clear off better and you have less risk of slips and falls. So there's definitely a inherent savings there when you have less risk, so.
Also, when you apply the salt, it helps create that brine, because the salt needs to brine, and then once it does that, it stays on the surface, and so it does help with the de-icing of the parking lots as well.
And when did you plan on doing this?
I plan on doing it as soon as we have approval. I'm penciled in right now, and I told them that upon board approval, it's going to take a bit of coordination with summer school going on and stuff like that. So it'll happen in the next 3 or 4 weeks. Here and there, we're going to be piecing it together. So it'll be good in the end.
So this will be everything except for the north and the west lot at the high school?
The north lot, we are going to, we're working with the project to rebuild that. So once we're done here and that project is done, all of the asphalt parking lot around the high school will be in really good shape. It'll
Is that
all
what
be-
they're doing with the new lot then on the west side? Is that gonna be asphalt?
Yeah, that'll all be new asphalt. Mhm.
So Keith, how does this affect the budget?
These are included in this year's budget, so we've got the money set aside. Basically, it's just approving the best contract option for us.
Yeah, this was approved when we did the last budget, and basically, it was time to come up with it. The money
Correct.
has been approved already.
Our capital improvement budgets had these in there, and the last year when we kept the bolded items, we kept the parking lot maintenance in there because we need to do it this year to prolong the life of those lots.
Because of the cost is why we brought it up.
Because what is the dollar amount? The board has to approve over a certain dollar
It's
amount.
over $10,000, I believe.
Okay.
How much did we have budgeted?
Tom, do you know how much we budgeted?
I had 57 in the capital improvements budget, but I also have about 5,000 in my general 808 account. That's for parking lot maintenance. So we're pretty well covered.
And as you can imagine, we've had a pretty good year utility-wise with rates being down and no extreme cold. So we've got enough in the maintenance budget to be able to make sure we cover this.
All right, we need a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the proposal on the parking lot asphalt improvements.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Tom?
I worked with BSG, which is a building services group, which is our longtime cleaning service provider. We've had a really good working relationship with them for a number of years. I think we're going on 13 or 14 years. Part of their contract has an automatic renewal clause in there, but every year I ask them to update a proposal. And what they're proposing is a 1% increase for 2016-17 and a 2% for 2017 and 18. One benefit of working with BSG is when we have budget shortfalls, we'll delve into that contract and find ways that maybe we can adjust our cleaning schedules. They're really good about that. So we really have a good working relationship with them.
One thing I'll add to that is, I think the increases are very small when you consider what's happening in the labor market, and their costs for labor are going up more than this. Because when there's low unemployment rates, people have other options, and they're having to increase their wages to try and attract and retain people. So I was pretty happy when I saw the percentage increases here, considering the current economic conditions.
So I'll make a motion to approve the BSG contract for the next 2 years.
I'll second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Good job, Tom.
All right, thank you.
And next, elementary science curriculum. Jill
And John?
and John.
Well, maybe. Good evening.
Good evening.
Don Fisher and I are here this evening to talk to you about science and the elementary science adoption. Our goal tonight is to first of all outline for you the process that we took in order to get to our decision this evening. We'll also talk to you about the main components within the curriculum documents that you've received. We'll share with you the recommended material that we're looking at. And finally, our goal is to receive an approval from you this evening to proceed with purchasing new equipment and adopting the curriculum. So first of all, the what. When I first came into the school district in 2009, I was an observer at your June meeting, and at that June meeting, you adopted an elementary science curriculum. And we like to work on curriculum improvements every 5 years, and that was our plan. What John and I found is as we started working on it, that the state was kind of not quite sure where they were going to move with their standards. Currently in place, they had the 1998 model academic standards, and they were looking at the newest standards to come out of from the nation, and that was the NGSS, the National Next Generation of Science Standards. Well, with all the controversy that went on at the state level with the Common Core, they put a hold on adopting the NGSS, and we were poised as a group to move forward with them. We had a meeting at CISA 7. We'd spent time digging into the curriculum. John had run some really powerful curriculum meetings, and then with the state stopping, we kind of had to reassess what we were going to do. And as we considered what we were going to do, the state said, this time stick with that 1998 model academic standard. And we looked at it and we felt that it was adequate. What the standards did at that time was it really outlaid what we wanted kids to be able to know. And that's fine. But what the NGSS standards do is they take it to the next step and they say, okay, this is what we want kids to know. Now, what are you going to do with that information? So it's actually helping kids make the connection to the real world and how science fit into their lives. And so at that point, we really decided that we needed to move forward with adopting the NGSS. And we weren't worried about the fact that the state had said stick with the 1999 standards, because we were actually adding more rigor to what we were doing. And so that's...
And the rest
most of the rest of the schools in the state are doing the same thing. Everyone has kind of been on hold because we're waiting and waiting. And now, from going to the science convention the last couple of years, the majority of schools in the state are moving forward and adopting NGSS stuff, even though the state is still on hold.
And so I'm going to turn this over to John, because he's going to talk a little bit about the why we went to the NGSS. I gave you a little bit of information, but John's going to go a little further.
Well, she said we started, this movement has been happening for a while. They set up a framework. It's different than the Common Core. I think sometimes people correlate all the Common Core, all these different movements together. The science group did it separately. It's kind of done the same way that Common Core is, but they're not necessarily associated. A big piece of the NGSS is they involved companies. It was actually, the whole process was run, there's a company that funded everything for it. But there's been much more of a push with the new science standards to first of all incorporate engineering into the science curriculum. And again, this bigger push she talked about where kids are able to do something with what they've learned now, be able to show that you have learning, be able to transfer that knowledge into something else versus just knowing facts and figures. And so our crew has been excited to move forward on this. In fact, we've been ready for a couple of years. And as we've gone into the moving forward this year, one of the things we did with the elementary is they looked at where the Einstein kits fit into the national, the NGSS standards. And we found, we knew there were holes in there, but they found that there were holes in there. And they came back and said, this isn't addressing NGSS. And so then we started looking at other things that were available. At the elementary level, the program we're adopting is about the only thing that's really moved forward. At the middle school and high school level, everybody is still kind of scrambling because they're all trying to switch the materials so that they're NGSS favorable. So we've decided, that elementary is ready to move. The rest of us will probably move next year.
And as we talked about the NGSS standards, we put 4 words up there because we really felt that those 4 words really summed up NGSS. First of all, it builds that foundation and that understanding of science. It asks you to apply what you've learned to different situations. You integrate not just the science, you integrate math, social studies, literacy, and also the engineering piece, which is huge. And then, as John mentioned too, we ask kids to do something with the science. Our evaluation is a demonstration of how they incorporated that knowledge. Oh, okay, so how we went ahead and approached our curriculum work. What we did first of all is back in 2013, we pulled together our science committee and we started looking at the NGSS in anticipation of what the state was going to do. We also looked at our current curriculum that was in place and adopted in 2009. We did find some strengths, and we also looked at some areas of focus that we needed to address. We provided a lot of staff development, and we talk about a lot of staff development. Staff spent a great deal of time with Paul Anderson, who's a national consultant. And if you ever get on YouTube and you type in Paul Anderson or Bozeman Science, he has got the most YouTube videos, and he's done everything on the NGSS. What it looks like grades K2, what it looks like grades 3-5. And I don't necessarily know if I'd call him entertaining, but there's a lot of good information that we can get from that.
I think the thing that really intrigued us with Paul Anderson is this whole movement is basically saying it's important to start science at an early level and build. So K2, they introduce things. 3-5, they cover those same things again in more depth. 6-8, they cover those same things again in more depth. And in 9-12, we do it again. And it's a building process. And on his website, he's taken the whole. He's kind of a geek with internet things. He's big on YouTube and he's big on a lot of things. But he's put these things together where he says basically K2 he goes through all the topics and says, K2 you should be doing this, then 3-5 you should be doing this, and he goes through and kind of lays that all out. I thought he'd be great to bring in to help us see that flow. And I would say from the several times he's been here now that he's been very, very well received by our teachers.
We also, along with the staff development, we looked at what we were currently doing within our science program at the elementary. We looked at our curriculum and we looked at the support materials that we had. And we said, okay, this is what we're using. Does this work with where we need to head? And I do have that whole process. If you want to get into the nitty gritty of how we actually did this, it was a big deal. And we spent a lot of time talking about it. It's reflected in your board packet. There's the executive summary. It's about an 11-page document. But I really felt it was important that you knew of the hard work and the study that went into this curriculum adoption, because curriculum is the most important thing that we do. It's what we teach. And so we really created an executive summary that outlined everything. And I'm going to pass this back over to John again, because he's going to talk about that instructional practice and what it's going to look like in our classrooms.
Well, part of the NGSS format is they call it the 5E method. You engage students in a topic, and then they explore, and then after they've explored, they come back and explain things, and then you have them elaborate on what they've learned, and in the end, you evaluate them. And this technique actually came out with the last adoption. There were several textbooks that built that in, but it was never really ingrained. And now everybody's kind of moving in that direction because of the success that some of the programs that came out last time had. And again, Paul really liked the thought that we'd be incorporating that into our teaching. When he worked with the elementary teachers, one of the things he said is he's worked with elementary teachers around the country and around the world. They're good teachers, but they don't know how to get the kids involved and how to get the kids to be good scientists. You know, the idea is to get the kids to be little scientists. And we tend to, tell them too much, and we tend to, not want them to struggle at all and things. And this method allows them to comfortably struggle, shall we say? And I mean, what you have to do is realize when something comes real easy, kids aren't learning. There's nothing to it. When they have to engage a little bit more, struggle a little bit, then now you're tapping on those things they're not sure of. And basically, if you do it properly, you get the kids to really engage in this, and they understand things better. And so, a real, again, when he was here working with the elementary teachers, he had them go through and do an activity, and it was really eye-opening to watch. Basically, he has a format we call it inquiry teaching. Sometimes people just say, go ahead and try it. Well, you have to kind of guide students through that. And part of what he had them do is, analyze what variables do you have to control. And even the teachers, even some of the high school teachers that were there, didn't predict all the variables they needed to control when they started doing the experiment. And again, it was just eye-opening watching, because as they started doing things, all of a sudden say, oh, we didn't think about this, we didn't think about that. That's the kind of things we need to have happening with our kids when they're learning things. Is they have to be cognizant that we're doing something wrong. It's not cooking. It's not where you go through step by step by step. You have to stop and think at each step of the way. Is this what's supposed to be happening? And this methodology, I think, really gets teachers and kids doing that better.
Well, and I was paying attention earlier in the board meeting when Dr. Haynes brought up that whole idea of what business is looking for. And they're looking for kids who can communicate and explain and think critically. And this process really outlines that. So it's getting them ready for the world. Yes?
I think that the math program has done this here a few years ago, and one of the criticisms that I heard back then, and maybe you guys don't even hear it because it's the parents that complain about it. They don't understand that why Johnny didn't get an A in their class because in math class, because he's always done good in math, because they expect him to learn and struggle.
Mm-hmm.
So I hope that when I heard you say that they learn and have to struggle a little bit to do this, that you make sure that the parents understand that, hey, your kids are going to struggle a little bit in the science curriculum because we're changing it, because we're changing the way we do things.
And that's a great point, because what comes out in the science material are student and teacher rubrics where criteria is clearly listed, and then the parents get a copy of that. And so they'll see exactly what we're looking for. And it's not like we're looking for the right answer. What we're looking for is how kids record their thoughts and their thinking processes and the way they kind of guesstimate that science is going to happen.
But most parents want to see that,
yes,
we got it right, or no, we got it wrong, and how did, they don't understand
That's a great
you
point.
just said.
That's a great point. And even group work, I think, sometimes gets parents questioning what's happening, because when you turn learning over to a group, you question the accountability piece. And that, again, is factored into when actually teachers get into the teaching of the lesson. There is a method in how each child has responsibility, because there's individual accountability and then there's group accountability, even at the first grade level, which I think is pretty cool. What you received in your board packet, along with the executive summary, were 6 curriculum documents, each representing our grades, each grade level. And what every document has, first of all, is our philosophy and really what we believe in science. We want kids to engage in science, ask and answer questions. We've listed our goals of the science program. We want real-world connections for the kids. We want them to think like scientists, and we want them to be able to communicate ideas. We also list cross-cutting concepts, and that's really interesting. It's not something that we've talked about in science before, but cross-cutting concepts are the mechanism in which we teach kids science. And if you think about cause and effect, that applies in a lot of different areas of science. We're going to show you something within the textbook in a little bit, and it's actually going to talk about structure and function. And in this case, we're going to talk about life science and how the structure of an elephant and the specific body or the organs within the elephant's body help it reproduce, help it to live, help it to grow. So we'll talk about structure and function, which is a cross-cutting concept. The standards are listed in that document for physical life, earth, space, and engineering. And finally, we ask for program or performance indicators, where students have to show us what they know. And they can create a model, they can create an argument, or they can critique something. But they're asked to actually do something, which is pretty cool. So the program that we're bringing forward for you this evening that really follows very well with our curriculum work is the National Geographic program. It's 2016. And as John mentioned, it is the only program that is currently out and available that actually was built on the NGSS. And I'm going to tell you right now, this was a real struggle for our elementary teachers, because in the past, we've utilized a local vendor who provides us with learning kits. And the teachers have done remarkable things with those learning kits. What we did, though, is when we lined them up to the NGSS standards, we found that the kits were very limited in what they were doing. And I'm going to give you an example. In 3rd grade, they do this wonderful kit on plants. It's called Fast Plants. And they talk about all of these things with plants, and it talks about the structure and the function of plants. Well, the standard for the next generation science standard says you got to bring in animals. And you talk about how plants and animals adapt, not just plants. So then what it would require us to do if we were to keep that kit is to go out and recreate or find different material to support that kit. Then when we looked at 2nd grade, the kits that we were currently using didn't align at all. And so that would mean that we'd have to either look at different kits or different materials at 2nd grade, because nothing that they were doing was in keeping with the NGSS. And again, why it was so difficult is because we have a great relationship with this local vendor, and the people there are stellar. They have been working with us on this. They've even talked with the vendors who make these kits, FOSS and STC. They've spent a lot of time saying, come on, you got to help us. You got to get moving forward with these kits and these materials because our teachers want them. And these 2 organizations, these 2 big companies have been very slow to move. And so
it's a big change. The whole philosophy of the next generation science standards is different. And so the kits the kits fit in, but they do, like she said, leave a lot of holes. I thought, because our crew has become very used to the kits and stuff, I thought that it would be a struggle to get them to want to change. And I was really amazed that almost to a person, they said, this program is better than what the kits are. And that was eye-opening, because over the years, they said, you're not going to get rid of the kits, are we? We're not going to get rid of the kits, are we? And they were very open after looking at this, because, I mean, it's not that there aren't kits in this one. This is going to be a little different. But it's just done a little bit differently.
So while John is talking about the strengths, I'm actually going to hand out some of the materials that are available. Big books are something that is used in kindergarten only, and every classroom teacher will have that. And then I have first, second, third, and fourth grade texts there. And I'm also going to share with you, if someone wants to hang on to that fourth grade text, we're actually going to be using it in a bit. But these are some of the classroom libraries that are built within the program.
Again, she talked about the strengths. This program was created very well matching up to NGSS. When you look at NGS, when you look at the actual standards and how they do things, and you look at the materials here, that impressed me that they actually followed. A lot of the companies are trying to mimic things. They're trying to take what they're doing now and make it kind of fit into NGSS. They actually had, when they came here and showed us their stuff, they had the old stuff they did and the new stuff. And the teachers that were there, as we started looking at things, put the old stuff away. We want to look at this. And again, I just think it does a very good job of addressing NGSS, which is what we really want to do.
So, John, do you find this then to be more rigorous, more involved for the students?
I wouldn't necessarily say it's any more rigorous. It's just it's done better. They blend the topics better together. Again, our old curriculum was it was done very well here, done very well here, done very well here, but we had these gaps in between. When we originally adopted the Einstein program, we were supposed to have like 4 kids at each grade level, and that really never materialized. And then there were some kids that came out. They had about 14 or 15 kids that when we adopted the very first time that were well tested and stuff. Then they kind of hurried up and made the rest of those kits. And some of the kits we got just didn't work very well. We ended up dropping some. And I even, when Wendy was here, I said, we have these gaps that are happening now. We don't have a lot of physical science in our elementary. Every year they have life science. They were kind of hit and miss with the earth science, but the physical science part, we had just big gaps in that. And we would try to fill it in. They would do some book teaching and stuff, but it was like piecing it together. This does a much better job of doing it all. And as you're going to see, we talked about the integration thing. One of the problems we're having at the high school is, biology, chemistry, physics has never really worked well. The rest of the world, they integrate their science. They do like science 1, 2, 3, 4, like our math program. And I don't know that the country is ready to go that way. The standards kind of lean that way, that's going to a science 1, 2, 3, 4 program. But the reality is, when you're doing biology, there's chemistry involved, there's physics involved, and you have to kind of blend those things in. And this does a nice job of doing it, as you'll see.
This is an exact copy of, or this is what the student actually sees within the student book. And let's see. We're going to go ahead and take you in. This again, this is life science, and this is from a 4th grade book. Oh no. Well, maybe I won't be able to take you in.
Because this will come up on the computers is what you're doing
Yes, yes, what we're doing is I'm trying to get into the e-text, and let's see if they'll let me in this way. We had problems before with it not recognizing this device.
And then, John, the Einstein kits we have now will no longer be used if we adopt this?
Well, for the first adoption year, they said they wanted to do the whole program. There may be several kits down the road that we bring back in that still fill needs.
Okay.
But they felt it wouldn't be fair to this program to
use
to do that. They said we should do this for a year and.
So we'll hang on to the Einstein kits, just no?
No, not now, no.
They're right now they're, I want to say, a little bit turmoil. The fact is, the companies that make the kits, I mean, they just pack the kits and send them out to us. The companies that actually make the kits have not moved forward. They've tried to kind of piece things together, move kits to different levels. And I talked with one of the representatives at the Chicago last year, and they said, we're frustrated because we're trying to patch this rather than do something new. Mm-hmm. And that's what a lot of the companies are doing now. They tried to patch things, and they're realizing that's not doing it. So now they're doing this whole scale redo. So in 2 or 3 years, they may have a new kits out that would be better.
But not
But right
using
now, they
it
don't,
right
no.
now.
They're probably at least 1 or 2 years away. Most of the book companies are at least a year away.
So this is, again, is what you would see in the 4th grade book. This is a 2-page spread, and this is within the unit of structure and function. And I'm just going to jump ahead. It talks, first of all, about the parts of the plant and the function of each, the stem, the leaves, the roots. Now we're going to get into the actual part about looking at an animal. And what I think is really interesting about this page is this is a little bit different than what a student would see in the student text. A student in the text is going to see something that is resembling this. But instead of where you've got the plus sign, that's actually, it would say teeth, and then it would give a definition of teeth. But in this case, it gets a little bit more interactive. And the other thing that's really wonderful about this particular e-text and book is right here, if it'll let me click in, it's not going to. I can click on this. S stands for the standard that a student, or that the student and the teacher would be looking at. And then one of the other things that students would look at then is taking that application of knowledge, where they would look at that elephant and then compare it to the wolf, and then come up with an argument, and then talk about how their structure and function is different and how it's the same. And so we're asking kids to take that knowledge and work with it.
And what age level is it?
This is 4th grade. John brought up a really interesting point before with when we talked about that whole idea of combining science with different, when you think about earth science and physical science. I'm going to back up one.
We talk about, sometimes when we put units together, we're talking about the senses, how do things see? Well, you start talking about sight, really, there's this whole physical science thing behind it with light. Well, how does light work and things like that? So what they do is they kind of blend this in as just a little sideline activity versus like teaching a unit on light before you do this. They integrate the physical science right into this unit. So you're not necessarily teaching a whole physical science unit, but you're giving them enough information about how light works so that they can understand how animals see. And that's a big part of the NGSS is in the past we've taught things in isolation. And I mean, it's kind of like what happened in math. We taught algebra and we taught geometry, but there's geometry and algebra and there's algebra and geometry. And now that you teach math 1, 2, 3, you can blend those together and kids understand it a lot better. And I think that's what you're going to see happening in science. I mean, all the way through high school.
In these books, just a real quick question, and you just should, you can go back to one page, but you got the different activities that they're going to be doing in the classroom, or projects or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So in Einstein, you got a lot of that consumable stuff and everything that you. Who's going to put all that together? Is that the teacher that does all that now?
What we'll be doing is we're purchasing the main kit, and then what we'll do is when the consumable list comes up, they have to buy cups or something, what they'll do is they'll complete an order, and then they'll get that to the curriculum office, and then we'll take care of it, make sure that they get what they need. The consumable items will most likely be straws, cups, something that we can easily go to Walmart and pick up.
And you're going to do that?
Well, I think I'm going to actually have Nancy Pierce do that for me. But I like to shop, so don't get me wrong. I can easily do that. That was a question that the teachers had too, because when Einstein kits came to us, it came with everything in it.
Well, when you purchase a program, you get like a main kit that has consumable. It's not consumable stuff. It's stuff that they would keep, store. But then there is consumable parts that go with it.
And then this is just one other activity again where they think like a scientist, and they have a problem and then they have to create a solution. And sometimes there will be a lot of engineering pieces that will go with that as well. But I'm not able to interact with this one, with this computer, but there are spots here where again you can click on that and then it's read to the student. And then where you see this read, it's My Science Notebook, that informs the student that they'll be making and taking notes and putting that right into their notebook.
What I really like about it, the teacher's edition, is they help steer. They give suggestions. Again, it's not, you don't have to follow their instructions completely, but they give you hints and suggestions as to, you know, what to do here, maybe try this, maybe try that.
And what's really cool about this particular page, I like this Cesar Milan, he's the dog whisperer. And what they talk about in this particular article is the fact that he doesn't teach dogs to sit and stay and do all of that. He utilizes their natural instincts and their senses. And it really pulls together that whole structure and function. And then it lets kids know that there are specific jobs out there that relate to different areas of science. But that was pretty cool.
So do you see any issues with the technology or the resistance by the staff? Or do you think this is going to be extremely well received?
Well, I think it'll be well received because we have iPads, we have Chromebooks, we have student stations right now where they're utilizing the technology. And it's really cool. I wish I could show you some of the activities where you can click and drag things. I do it on my computer, but for whatever
And the
reason.
second follow-up is, do we have any evidence that shows that this will attract and retain kids to liking and loving science as they go up through the grades? Or is it too new to know that this is going to hopefully develop those future scientists? Or
I think the intent of the committee that actually put this all together was to get kids more interested in science, that they felt this would be a better way of doing that.
Okay.
I think one of the problems we have in science is we don't build enough, and all of a sudden they hit chemistry and they, you know, that's too much for me, I'm done. And the thought is this is going to kind of streamline into that so that we don't do that anymore. Again, that I think it's crucial that we always, you know, middle school didn't do this, and middle school teachers say, well, elementary didn't do this. What's nice is it's all laid out what's supposed to be happening, and so, you know, I know that they should have done this in 6th grade, and so if they're, you know, if we have a concern, we can say, hey, what's happening here? We can go back and address those things because it's all laid out now. In our present program, it's not so laid out.
Well, I'm going to jump ahead to the cost of the adoption. This is the big ticket item. When we worked with our vendor, we did everything that we could to keep our costs low, and the teachers did a nice job of working with that. Within this adoption, within the National Geographic program, we get the big books, as I've mentioned, student books. There's an e-text that we looked at, and also the support materials for 6 years related to that e-text. You saw a sampling of the classroom libraries that link in to what they're learning. In fact, there's one collection that I think I put out there. There's 3 books that are the same title, but at different readability levels. So for a struggling reader, we could take that child down, same content, same pictures, same ideas, but different. There's a differentiation within the reading level. Same thing for the kid who's way above there, the more complex text. And then the teacher materials are also included in that. And then Hand to Mind is the company that works, collaborates with National Geographic. They're the ones that create the kits. And we've looked at the science kits for grades K through 5, 1 kit per classroom, and the company has assured us that that's a 2-year supply. And a lot of the things, as John has mentioned, batteries, circuits, all different kinds of things that are the non-consumable stay put, but we will have to purchase straws. A lot of typical find around the house items or go to the grocery store and pick up. So that the total adoption, when we look at everything, comes out to $123,000, which is about where we anticipated that it would be.
Where's 6th through high school at? I mean, are we at Project Lead the Way, or is that what we're leaning towards?
There'll be a little bit of both.
It's coming next.
Oh, yeah. Okay, you can wait. I just have to throw a side note in here, because as I mentioned earlier, I was at the board meeting in 2009. And as I looked at the adoption, the full adoption for that program was 140-some thousand.
149,000.
Yes. And there was an ongoing cost every year of $20,000. And that was to purchase the Einstein kits. And that, again, we're looking at, if we're putting in about 16,000, and that's a 2-year supply, I think we are financially, we're in a pretty good spot. The challenge, again, is going to be who gets to go do the shopping and make sure that teachers have everything that they need. that's the ticket for that item.
Okay, and then, you want to talk about
Okay.
professional development?
Yep, the next steps for the elementary, and John, I'm going to turn over the 6-12 to John, but we're going to continue looking at professional development. Our elementary teachers do a really good job of teaching a lot of content. We just had a data retreat, and one of the elementary teachers said, you know what, you expect me to know math, you expect me to know social studies, you expect me to know ELA, and you expect me to know science. And so we expect a lot of them, and so we want to give them the support that they need. Now, there's a lot of teachers who are nervous about science because they're going to talk about light, they're going to talk about energy, they're going to talk about waves, a lot of things that they're not used to working with. So we're going to build that content knowledge for teachers, and hopefully the Einstein Project will be right alongside us in building that content knowledge and understanding. The next steps, again, when we approve this curriculum and the materials, we want to get the teachers into the material. We want them to look at the e-text, the student text, the teachers' materials, so we can get ready for a training in August. Because we would have National Geographic Science coordinators and trainers come in and work with us. During the school year, we want the teachers to collaborate to talk about it. They'll be teaching the units at the same time. And so we want to know what's working, what we need to support, and then we'll also talk about is there a hole or is there something that we need to do differently as we move forward? And then finally, this is the opportunity for teachers to talk about how science fits into literacy, math, and social studies. Because within the teacher's edition, there's a ton of resources to look at literacy and how to bring into questioning. There's just tons of different activities, and the teachers need time to just look at that.
And 6-12, 6-8 is actually ready to adopt too, but there's no materials out there for them to use. They've kind of gone through and redone their content. A big thing they've done after Paul Anderson came is they've shifted their focus to processes, which is they felt the little bit that they did this year, they felt they had a lot better understanding by the kids this year because of the way they've done things differently. So they're very happy about the change that they've made. The vendor that we presently have has new materials coming out, but they won't be available until 17-18. And they said they would give us, if we adopted with them, they would give us what they have now, and they would, grandfather us right into the new materials. And the middle school people said, why would we do that? Why don't, we'll continue working on our processes the following year, and then, when the real material comes out, we'll adopt, because they basically said, that what's out there now doesn't fit. You can take bits and pieces out of it. We already have that. We can take bits and pieces out of what we already have. So why adopt this new thing now? They're going to continue working on their shifting to process-oriented science and just continue using the same content that they're using now. In high school, we're starting now to revamp. Ours is going to be a major change, and one of the big things that doesn't happen in high school science is earth science. We have an earth science class, but not all kids take it. And NGS, even the last set of standards said, we should be teaching earth science in high school, and nobody does it. And unless you have 4 years of science, it's not going to happen. And so the gist to us is, how do we get through earth science, biology, chemistry, and physics, which all kids are supposed to have in 3 years that are required. And so we've done a lot of finagling, talking, trying to reinvent things. And again, this Paul Anderson has been all over the world. He said we're all in the same boat. He just came back from Dubai, and he said, you guys are in the same boat they are. Where do you start now? Now we know what we want to do. Where do we start? And so we're kind of starting. They call it backwards.
Oh, understanding by design.
Understanding by design. It's backwards design. You start with where do we want the kids? What do we want the kids to be able to do? Then you work backwards and say, what do we have to do to get them there? And literally what will happen is biology will stay, but it won't be like it is now. It'll be split into semester courses. It'll be biology with a focus on cells and biology with a focus on environmental biology. And then instead of having integrated science, we'll have kind of an earth science class. It'll be earth science with a focus on weather and earth science with a focus on astronomy. And then as kids get to the upper level, we'll kind of have a split. We'll have a physical science class that'll be chemistry and physics, and then we'll have actual chemistry and physics and again, I don't want to say we're going to track kids, but that's generally what happens is your college kids move this way. But the kids not going to college also have to have that physics and chemistry background. And so it's going to be, an interesting change for us to try to work that. We kind of felt after, kicking this around, freshmen, having physical science with freshmen, first of all, they have physical science in 8th grade. We had this problem with kind of filling in holes that they didn't get to and stuff, so we've kind of eliminated that. We've kind of fixed their curriculum, so the holes are going to go away. And our thought is, if we can get into physical science, it's more real world science that those kids would, car crashes. The physics of car crashes is much more enticing to kids than heating something up with a Bunsen burner at 9th grade. So the thought is to get them more interested and have basically a pathway for kids to understand science, even if they're not going to college. Because right now we don't get, majority of our kids don't get any physics, and only about 3/4 of them take chemistry. And NGSS says all kids should have all of that. So we have a lot of work to do.
And the big challenge is licensure, because as we pointed out in the elementary program, if you talk about plants and animals and then you pull in light, that's easy to do for the generalist, the elementary licensure. But when you start looking at physics and chemistry and then life sciences, there's issues sometimes with teacher licensing that we have to address. And to wrap things up, before we actually talk about the approval, we have to give a big shout out to our science curriculum at the elementary level, because they've been wrestling with this for 3 years. They've spent a lot of time talking about it. We had a teacher actually take a unit and bring it to her students. The kids have been looking at the teaching materials. They love them. But these people, sometimes they go unnoticed, and so I just wanted to read their names out loud, so if they're watching or hearing, they know that they're important to the process. So we had John as our curriculum program leader, Jill Karstens, Doreen Elder, and Kathy Korowski were our kindergarten team. Our 5K, first grade, Janelle Fossen and Jennifer Johnson. Grade 2, Robin Thielman, Sarah Scott. Grade 3, Doug Anderson, Alicia Johnson. Grade 4, Tammy Ingeldinger, Kirsten Mardo. Grade 5, Barbara Dolan Wallace, Joel Hibbard. All of our principals were involved. Our literacy coordinator was also involved. We spent a lot of time talking and looking and evaluating and learning. So they did a really fine job. So you've had questions as we've gone along, and I know it's a lot of information to throw at all of you. But curriculum is so important, and I come back to that all the time, that we need to talk about it and let you know what's happening in our classroom. So do you have any questions for us that haven't been asked?
The NGSS is the thing that's out there right now, and it used to be Common Core. Is this a well-rounded program in 2 years from now, that if it changes to ABCD program that we have to follow, are we going to be able to accommodate that? I mean, it seems like we invest all this money into following a certain standard, and a couple of years later, you throw it out the door and throw something else in that.
You know, that's a really good question, because as we talked about moving forward, we asked that same thing. Do we wait? Do we wait to see what the state does? But what's important with the next generation science standards is they really take that foundation of the Wisconsin model academic standards and extend it. I don't think that we're going to see a lot of changes happening.
I wouldn't, I mean, not to say, because 1998 was the last standards that was adopted, and this is different than that was, but yeah, I wouldn't anticipate anything new happening in the next 10 or 15 years. I think that when they put the NGSS together, it was done, one group decided the framework, and then a different group actually put the content together. And it was a large operation. They had like 3 or 4 times they had open feedback where you could look in and question things, and they made a lot of adjustments on it. And so I think it's been a lot of work by the leaders in science. I wouldn't anticipate a major change coming soon, because I think what they've tried to do is make us more worldly. They've looked at what other countries do, and they're trying to make us closer, better.
And I think too, developmentally, as we followed the strands from kindergarten, 5K, all the way to 5th grade, we felt that the expectations of the NGSS were stretching kids, but they also were developmentally built so they'll help kids be successful.
I think a big part of NGSS, that there was a lot of research put in. That was the big thing they said from '98 to now is we've had a lot of research that shows kids, we've learned kids learn differently. And so they've taken that research and turned that into this new methodology of teaching. So again, more research may change that down the road, but this is a much more research-based program than anything else that's ever come out.
Do they change as it goes? If something happens in a program, I mean, do they change that for us when we adopt this?
I believe they will, because with that e-text, we get 6 years of that. So things may change within the e-text. It might not necessarily reflect it in the textbook, but if there's any kind of an update, I know that they'll support that through e-text.
Jill, I don't know if you said anything about it yet, but as far as training for the teachers, when is that going to occur?
Well, we'll first start with that in August, and they'll have a day where they work with a specialist, a science specialist from National Geographic, and then as they collaborate, they're going to dictate what their needs are based on what they're seeing with student learning. We had a teacher say, we want to learn more about assessment. And so we're keeping that on our radar, and we're opening it with the board's approval earlier with those collaboration days that we're adding into the calendar. This is one of the opportunities where teachers will get to sit down and talk about what they're seeing. Because with science especially, our elementary teachers are a little nervous. We want to make sure that we get them the support that they need.
Well, one of the concerns they had both with the Einstein kits and what was the other things you were trying, Project Lead the Way.
Yes.
They felt they didn't give them enough background. They kind of expected them to know more about these topics than they did. And they always kind of felt like, I really don't know my topics as well. And the National Geographic one does a much better job of giving them background information. That was one of the things I saw right away. It's like, this is nice because if I don't know anything about this topic, it quickly gives me some insights as to what I'm doing. Which the other program, and that was one of the complaints the teachers had, is that I sometimes feel like I could read a book now because I'm going to teach about something I never taught about before and I don't know anything about it. The National Geographic stuff gives them some nice background. They commented on that when they were looking at it.
I know Einstein said that that's what one of their main goals is to change that around too, so teaching something about not just what you're teaching.
Right, because they've talked to us about that whole getting teachers to teach science better. It's difficult because they're not science teachers. They haven't been trained to be science teachers, and it's different.
And some of the discussion with the Einstein Project right now is the fact that they're trying to evolve, and they'll get into that train the trainer and staff development, because there are some awesome people at the Einstein Project, and we've already had conversations about how they can support us with good staff development. We anticipate a really good partnership moving forward. We may not utilize their kits, but I think Einstein has seen that as well, that they need to evolve, because what they've been relying on from the vendors hasn't been a reality yet. So.
Well, a number of our teachers are Einstein.
Yeah, we have a number of teachers that train for Einstein. So that again was a very challenging decision. But again, we talked about what's best for kids, and this was the program that we felt could do it for us.
So supposedly Americans are falling behind other countries in sciences. What now this hopefully helps us close that gap somewhat, but what are others doing that is allowing their students to excel beyond Americans in the sciences?
If I had to say it in one word, I'd say that integration thing. We're afraid to integrate. We have even when they're doing the NGSS, they hesitated to say, you need to integrate. But basically, we teach all these science topics separately. One of the things in the NGSS, they talk about are cross-cutting concepts, things like energy. Use energy in biology, use energy in chemistry, use energy in physics. We teach them all separately, and we have kids who learn about energy and biology that don't make the connection that the same thing's happening in chemistry, the same thing's happening in physics, because we compartmentalize it. The rest of the world laughs at us when we do that. They say, well, we learned energy, we learned all about energy in 9th grade, about here. They learned it all together it's a topic that blended right across the content. And so we have our foreign exchange students that sometimes they'll just say, you guys do things backwards. They'll just make these little comments like that because they learn physics in 9th grade, they learn physics in 10th grade, they learn physics in 11th grade, they learn physics in 12th grade. So they come into my physics class with a much more solid background than our kids have because we haven't done any physics until they get to physics, then we do it all. And so they have, much better feel for what we're doing. Our kids get there, but not all of them, because we only get,
Right, you only get them
we don't get them all there.
Right.
So that would, I would love to see us integrate, but again, the restrictions on licensure and stuff hold us back. I can't teach biology because I have no biology background. So that's a constraint. In math, I can teach algebra, geometry, calculus. Once I have my math license, I can teach everything in math. And that's a huge constraint for us in science. So we're trying to work around that.
But this helps with that? Like this,
Yes.
it's not quite to where.
Well, it's not 100% integrated the way we're doing it, but it's going to be better.
It connects. For an example, 2nd grade starts out with physical science, and they're going to talk about solids, liquids, and gases. Then they move into earth science, and they talk about how glaciers affect the formation of the land, water, how that affects things. So they're actually taking what they learned in physics and applying it now to earth science. And that's the same thing in biology as well. Those concepts go with them, so it's woven together, and that's pretty important. That's kind of what John is.
So this model is being done where? Like this model that we're talking about? This curriculum? I mean, is this brand new to?
Well, NGSS, the standards have been around since before 2012.
To go back to what Brian asked about, like, do we have any data that shows that it works? Do we have any metrics of, that shows like
being
this
successful
is,
with
I'm
it?
just
Or?
I
curious
think we have to
on
look again to the other countries because we have school districts that now are adopting NGSS. There hasn't been a common curriculum anywhere, whether it's Massachusetts or Minnesota or Michigan. Nobody's the same, but I think with the NGSS we're going to see that happening more and more because it makes science make sense. And I will be following that very carefully, but I believe that we're going to see.
All the textbook manufacturers are moving in that direction, even though, again, there's states that haven't adopted it. There's enough that have that it's pretty clear everybody's moving that way.
All right. Anything else? Okay, we need to have a motion to adopt this.
I'll make a motion to adopt the science curriculum as presented.
Okay.
Jill, this is a hard decision for me.
I know it is.
We have a motion in the second. Any other discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Great job.
Thank you. It was a long presentation, and thank you for your interest.
Make some more scientists, please.
Okay, in order to have this, we gotta have a budget, and I think Keith's got something for us here.
Okay, so each year before the new year starts, the new school year starts, we need to approve a preliminary budget. Basically, what it does is allows us to continue operations, continue payroll, things like that until our annual meeting where we get approval from the community. So what I've done is I've taken the budget that we showed you in April, made the adjustments that were needed to bring it in balance. So I'll quickly go over what changes we've made. We updated salary and benefits to reflect the compensation that was approved by the board. We reduced enrollment-driven staffing by 4.67 FTE, but we did add 1 FTE based on enrollment, adding a section of kindergarten in Valley View, and I want to make sure you're all aware of that because that was something that was not discussed at the April meeting, but based on student counts, and I would say it's better than a 50-50 chance we'll need to add a second kindergarten section, but I'm always cautious on that. We're waiting to see where numbers come in. Kindergarten and 4K are the hardest grade levels to predict because we have movement in there. So I believe that later this summer I'll be coming to you asking for another kindergarten section, but I'm not quite ready to make that commitment yet.
One of the questions I got, it wasn't about that. We had the staffing, or if we need it, is location.
And we didn't have a lot of choices because Pioneer did not have room for a 3rd class, and Cormier with 4K didn't have room for another kindergarten class. So like I said, my expectation is we'll end up with 2 at Valley View. I'm just not ready to go 100% and say, let's approve a second one at this point, but later this summer, if enrollment goes the way it looks like it is, I think we'll have 2 at Valley View.
Do you have kids on the waiting list for 4K and open enrollment?
Do we have kids on a waiting list for open enrollment students? No, we do not. First and third are the only grades we have kids on waiting list, because we approve such a large amount of open enrollment there. And that really sets the tone for where our grade levels are gonna be based on those 2 grades.
Mhm.
What we found is the 4K going to K, we've seen a fair number of students who come here for 4K and then don't come back for 5K. And we believe it has to do with location where the parents work in a half day, and the parents bring them in, then return them to their resident district for kindergarten. There's no way to predict that or to prevent that. We have to accept 4K as they come. So where I'm trying to get a comfort level is which parents are committing to come back for kindergarten from 4K so that I can feel comfortable with that number.
So, okay, kindergarten is my concern here, I guess, is that when we put in Cormier School and everything is because of some, that we thought it was a good thing, learning environment for kids to start their education off, and then the advent of 4K came around. We have a lot of open enrollment in 4K.
We have a good number, yes.
So I'm just wondering is, do we limit 4K open enrollment so that we can get more kids at Cormier School? Or are we farther off to keep them?
I think we're better off, in my opinion, financially, we're better off with
that's
a larger
financially,
grade
though.
size. I think that if you shortchange yourself, and we did this once about 13 years ago where we didn't allow kindergarten kids to come in through open enrollment or cap that number, and that became our smallest grade level, working all the way through the grades, and hurt us from a budget standpoint, and we end up with one grade level that's much smaller than where the other. What we're seeing is our kindergarten class size, the grade level size, is still smaller than the grade levels at the high school. And I would hate to cap that and make that difference any smaller. That's why we saw in the 2000s our total head count go down. Now we've stabilized head count with open enrollment filling those open spots. So I wouldn't recommend doing that. I think what we're seeing, you can talk to our elementary principals, we've got more parents who want to go for kindergarten to Pioneer and Valley View than we have seats at those schools. And the reason they want that is they have 1st through 5th graders at their schools, and it's more convenient for the parent to have their kids in one building. And Mr. Wires and Mr. Mardo, is that correct? Are you seeing that as well?
Right now, we have one section open, we have 46 requests coming to our review next year.
So we're giving residents first that shot. So, there's the benefit to being a resident. You get, if you want that, you have a better chance at it. And that's why I think we'll have no problem filling a second section at Valley View. I just need to get my comfort level that we've got enough kids to justify it.
The only reason I bring it up is that it's, when we had Cormier School, the reason we did it is we heard, it's going to be so much better for the kids this way. Now it's like, now let's go out to all the schools again. So it's like, what is it? Do we make Cormier a regular school again?
Well, I think 4K has become that gateway, where kindergarten was the gateway at the time when we opened Cormier up again. So now every student is still getting that Cormier experience through 4K, and still the majority of our students are getting that kindergarten Cormier experience, but we're giving some parents that option when it's more convenient. And what we're seeing is more parents than what we have spots at the other buildings are requesting that.
And Mark, 4K is the new K.
I know, but if I don't,
the concept here.
I guess what I'm getting at is if the parents want them in Valley View and Pioneer School, do we have 4K and K classes at Pioneer?
We wouldn't have room, right?
Do we take some kids and have Cormier become a 4K, K, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, just like it used to be?
Mm-hmm. It's something we can look at. I think, and we talked about wanting that gateway school and that first experience. Cormier works so well for the little kids, and having all kids at that age. As a 4-year-old, the oldest child you're going to see really is a 6-year-old who's finishing their kindergarten year, and that's I think a lot of parents feel that's a better place for their child to start and have their first school experience. And 4K is giving them that, but I understand what you're saying. We can definitely look at that and see if that's an option we want to pursue. It would mean remodeling Cormier so that you can handle the larger kids, and we'd have to look at classroom size, and we'd have to move furniture. We can do all those things. It's something worth looking at.
Well, I mean, if that's the trend that they're looking at, they want to come into the neighborhood schools, well, let's make them neighborhood schools then, or look at it anyway.
But I don't want you to mislead you into thinking that every parent wants that. What we've basically got is 80 or 90 parents out of 220 that I have requested that.
Almost half.
Yeah, over a third, getting close to a half.
I would say though, a lot of parents tell me, Mark, what they like about Cormier is the fact that it is 4K and K. I use the term as sort of like a little Narnia to those parents, because it's a school for the real little kids, basically. And there's that protection, and it's like a security blanket before the transition to a bigger school.
I agree with that too, Brian. I guess, that's why we did it and everything. But we see more and more of these kindergarten classes going back into the neighborhood schools. So if that's truly what we want, or what we're leaning towards.
But isn't it the reason they're going out to Valley View and to Pioneer is because 4K is, like you said, the new K. And so there's so many more kids, they just don't have classroom space for them.
Yeah.
Plus they have the Apple program there, right?
Yeah, and the year that just ended, we had the largest 4K class we've had in the district in my time here, since 4K started, basically. So we have a large kindergarten class for next year, and that's what's facilitating or causing the need. So we'll see if that becomes the trend and we have larger 4K classes. My gut instinct is when we've had this in the past, when we've had a larger one grade level, the following grade level is a little smaller. So it was the timing of when kids were born. When do they start school? So my gut instinct is we'll have back to our average size 4K class this year. So then the following year we may not need 2 classes at Valley View, or we may. We'll see where our student counts.
And I just want to voice my own experience. I'm the parent on the other side. I had a child in 3rd grade at Pioneer, a child in 5th grade at Pioneer, and my youngest started at Cormier. And I had to put her on a bus to go over to Cormier, and I would never have changed that. Sure didn't need to put her on a bus when Pioneer is so close to us, maybe 6 blocks away, but to have her in that building with the little ones instead of all the way up to 5th grade, I'd take that bus ride any day over that.
I just had a rental property showing with a young lady who lives in Abrams that had a daughter in 4K at Cormier, and she works in Ashwaubenon, so she brought her daughter to 4K specifically for Cormier, and now she's looking to move into Ashwaubenon as she becomes a kindergartner this next year.
Yeah, I think it's an asset.
I think
for
it's
our
an
school
asset
system.
too. I really do.
I think from my experience working with the open enrollment families, the people who are requesting the 5K at Valley View or Pioneer are ones who have multiple children, and they don't want a bus to the 2 different schools. It's not the people with their first child coming in. It's the one with multiple children.
Speaking of busing, so kindergarten kids that go to Valley View or Pioneer, are they on
Buses like the
same buses with kindergarten kids, or are they on buses with the older kids?
They're in the buses with the older kids. And that's why we don't have anybody who we've ever said this is where you're going. It's been requests, and we've been fortunate we have more requests than we have seats, so we haven't had to assign somebody to go to Pioneer. But we put them, it's the same bus, so in a lot of cases it's a much shorter bus ride then as well. So.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll keep going down the list of changes. We included energy savings from LED lighting. Tom's completing a lot of that LED lighting this summer, and we're seeing $30,000 in energy savings there. We have $28,000 because we negotiated a new natural gas contract, so we expect our heating bills to go down. We have E-rate rebates that we've secured on our technology purchases, so that's included in there. We have an LMS library media specialist reduction of 1 FTE as we've reassigned Corey Hansen, and we're reshuffling how the library media specialists cover the 4K through middle school level grades. And then the 10-year maintenance plan, we had originally scheduled to reduce more than this, but we have a reduction of about $155,000 in that 10-year plan maintenance items scheduled for next year. That's the thing when we were talking parking lots in the Cormier project. I anticipate we'll be able to add that back in when we have a more firm number on our open enrollment students, and we have a more firm number on our student counts. But we build that maintenance budget in a way that we can add it back in October when we're finalizing our budget, and it sets up the projects so Tom can do them in spring the following year. So that's done with a purpose so we can add it back in. It's really hard to change staffing or anything else once the school year starts, so this gives us that flexibility. So we end up with a total budget of $31,542,123, which is less than a 1% increase from the current year budget. Special education fund is at $2,598,242, which is also up less than 1%. Special education total budget will change as final grant approvals come in, so that could swing depending on more or less in federal grants.
Keith, going back to the maintenance budget, I know at the high school, and we talked about this, that there's like $330,000 more in the budget this year at the high school because of the projects that are going on.
Yeah, if you remember when the auditorium and pool projects came in over budget, the district agreed to cover certain things that were part of that project. So the pool evacuator system, which helps clean the air and is more energy efficient way of maintaining the environment in the pool, the pool covers, which obviously save a lot in heating and evaporation of pool water, and the LED lighting in both the pool and auditorium, the district agreed to cover those costs. So it's about $300,000 or a little over $300,000. We haven't gone to the final numbers on. So that's one of the reasons that 10-year maintenance budget this year of that budget is so high, because we have money in there for that. We also have money in there for the pool infill, because once the old pool is no longer used as a pool, we can't leave it the way it is. It's an unsafe situation. So as soon as the new pool opens, we've got to do something with the old pool. So we will drain it and fill it in and make it a flat surface, and be coming to you with bids on that probably right around the start of the school year, so we can start as soon as the new pool opens, and come with you with some plan options and some ideas on how we would like to use that space.
I was gonna ask, did they come through with anything on that yet?
We have some general plans, but we're refining them, and we're still looking at keeping that space, or making that space kind of a cafeteria and open area, so when there's a large event in the gymnasium or the pool, there's a gathering space or a place where people can eat, where they can take a break, where they can sit down, and then use that as the cafeteria, then move the kitchen to that area so the students could eat lunch and use that space during the day. And then the long-term plan, if we keep going that way, would then eventually be to move the district office into the area where the cafeteria space is now, and then we'd be able to reduce the building.
One other thing that at the last steering committee meeting for pool, auditorium, and community center, we're going over expenses and costs and stuff. Idea that we tossed out there a little bit is if we get all the different things that we needed for those buildings, is there any way that we can rebate back some money to the district or the village, in a joint manner, out of the donated money, so that we don't have that $300,000?
Out of the donated money, and also there's a contingency fund as part of the project variance. And that contingency fund, we've been very lucky that there haven't been a lot of draws on the contingency fund. So, and the majority of those would have happened by now if we'd have had things. But there still can be items that come up. So we're hopeful. We've had that discussion with the village on that. They are in agreement with us that those are options, and we'll continue to look at those as the projects continue to be finalized.
And the money keeps coming in, so people are still donating. I mean, we don't know all the donations for that, so they're going to be very well situated.
Mm-hmm. So what I'm looking for is approval of the budget of $31,542,123 in the general fund, and $2,598,242 in the special education fund. That's preliminary budget approval.
So move.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Any other discussion? I'm not hearing any. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Good job, Keith.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. right, board and superintendent communications, anything? Nothing further. Just the Jaguar Open coming this Friday.
This Friday.
There's still slots open, right? Everybody that wants to go? And
I've got a couple items, just
Sure,
a quick
Brian.
mention. And I wish Betsy was still here. James and I went to the 8th grade graduation last week at Parkview, and I can't recall the lady's name, the
Lois?
cook. Lois, that's it. It was really interesting as they announced her. She all but got a standing ovation from the 8th graders. And we just went through the food program and how, maybe that's not as popular with the kids, but she certainly is. So she deserves some recognition. She was too busy baking cookies for the kids that I couldn't say anything to her after the event. The other thing, I just wanted to quick recognize DI parents. I take my paper recycling over to Valley View for the recycling, and it was the same people that were there in a driving snowstorm like a month and a half ago or 2 months ago, whatever it was, that were there then on a Saturday morning when it was approaching 90 degrees by 10 o'clock in the morning. So just a recognition to the DI parents for being out there, and the kids too, for being out there to help unload cars. And then lastly, for the principals that we do have here, my daughter is working with the Shopko Foundation, and she comes home with the news that their requests are down. So they have money. What they like to do is give money for things, for items, usually in the $2,000, $2,500 range. If there are items that you could use in one of your schools or both of the schools that are, what's that?
We like money.
Yeah, who doesn't like money? But if there are things that you could use or would like to look at the Shopko Foundation to apply, I don't know that any of our schools have had any donations this year. I think Mark said that last year they did.
Schools, Alumni Association.
That was the alumni, yeah, so that may not even have been the schools, but to take a look at the Shopko Foundation website and see if there's something you want to apply for. And in addition to that, if you do go out and apply for it, if you also send it to me, and I'll make sure that she takes it right to the correct people. So, just
So as an example, if an elementary school is.
So
looking-
those who are here should get first.
those who are here, unless the others are listening on television. Yeah, but they like doing things or items as opposed to, we need money. It's usually
So
for
if an
something.
elementary school were happen to be thinking about redoing a playground.
Right.
That would be an
could some
outstanding
ideas
opportunity.
there.
Yep, that would be exactly the type of thing. So,
Nice.
All right, future board meetings and topics. The annual meeting, budget hearing is scheduled for Monday, July 25th at 6 o'clock. And our next board meeting will be scheduled directly after that on Monday, July 25th, and it will follow the annual meeting. Anything else? Anybody? Okay, motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you for coming.
6 o'clock?
6 o'clock.